Hey guys, in this video we're gonna put this in there. But before we do that, we need to give it a thorough cleaning because it's pretty grungy. In full disclosure, Super Clean provided the cleaning supplies that will be used in this video. Also, one lucky winner is going to get some free cleaning supplies from Super Clean. Keep watching for details. Oh, and since we're in the spirit of full disclosure, when I talked to the Super Clean rep, they said that the Super Clean might discolor aluminum. As a matter of fact, if you look on the bottle, it even says avoid prolonged contact with aluminum. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to use the Super Clean for the first step of the cleaning process, and then after that we're going to use another product to make the aluminum look nice and pretty. Alright, the valve cover is ready to go. Also, I removed all the little bits and bobs, and I also stay put. And I also want to remove these plates so I can clean inside there. They have a whole bunch of screws. They're Torx T30, but those screws are all gunked up right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this area with some Super Clean first to clean some of that gunk out of the screws, and then we will remove these plates. Okay, I decided to clean half of the valve cover so we can see the difference. Let's go ahead and rinse this off and see what it looks like. Alright, let's take a closer look. Now, to be fair, that grime is caked on pretty bad. So I had to let the Super Clean soak in for a bit, and I also had to agitate it with a brush. Also, it seems like the whole inside of this is coated with rust. Weird. But yeah, it even colored my brush. It turned it orange. That's crazy. But it looks like the Super Clean is doing a great job. So I'm going to finish this up off camera and we'll come back. Okay, off camera I cleaned the other half of the valve cover, and I also gave a second wash to the entire thing. I would say the results are pretty good. Now, there is still some stuff in the nooks and crannies, and we'll probably have to get that with a power washer. But our main goal was to get access to all these screws so we can remove these two plates, and then we can clean inside there. Well, some of those screws were not very tight. I think it's a good thing I'm doing this. Okay, all the screws are out. Let's remove these plates and see what's inside. Ew. Well, it's a good thing we got Super Clean, huh? Okay, so I got both the plates off, and somehow I managed to do that without damaging the gaskets. I would love to say I did that on purpose, but apparently it's pretty common for the gaskets to be damaged when you remove them. Now on this one, it might be hard to see on camera. On this guy, this gasket is hard as a rock. But this gasket is still kind of rubbery. You know, I'm not going to push my luck. These gaskets are still in one piece, and I'm going to try to keep them that way. Okay, now we need to clean these plates without disturbing those gaskets. So what I've done is I sprayed some super clean on them, and I'm going to use an old toothbrush to very carefully clean around the gasket. Just like that. Okay, this one came out really nice, but this one needs to be cleaned a second time. Okay, it's not perfect, but I think it's good enough. And also, full disclosure, I had to use a putty knife to scrape off some of the really stubborn stuff. Also, I want to make sure these little oil drains are clear. So I'm going to spray some brake cleaner in there. There we go. Alright. Okay, now it's time to clean inside here. Unfortunately, there's too many nooks and crannies for me to get into with the brush. So I think I'm just going to hose it down with super clean, let it soak in for 10 or 15 minutes, and then hit it with the power washer. And we'll lather, rinse, repeat as necessary. Check it out, this stuff is practically melting away. Pretty cool. Okay, so off camera, I actually ended up cleaning this 4 times. I cleaned it 2 times by soaking it and then hitting it with the power washer, but the backblast from the power washer was pretty obnoxious. So I switched over to the garden hose and washed it 2 more times. Also, I used a couple brushes to agitate it, or at least the areas I could get to. And I would say it did pretty good. I'm happy with that. So now let's move over to the top side of the valve cover. Okay, this side of the valve cover should be a lot easier to clean, because first of all, it's not as grungy. It doesn't have that baked in carbon deposits and stuff. And second of all, it doesn't have as many nooks and crannies for stuff to collect in. So yeah, this one should go a lot easier. Basically what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to spray the super clean on top, let it soak in, and I'm going to hose it off, and we'll go from there. Not bad at all. But I think I'll hit it a second time just to be sure. Check it out, the grease is literally melting off of there. That's awesome. Oh, by the way, I got into this area around this cap using a bore brush. Basically, I just did this. Okay, the valve cover is nice and clean, but remember earlier I mentioned that the super clean might discolor the aluminum. Now, on the underside of the valve cover, That's not really a problem. Actually, I don't see any discoloration anyway. But on the top side, we're starting to see like a chalky residue. You can see some of it right there. And we can see some of it over here too. That might be oxidation. Anyway, this is the point where I'm going to use that second product I alluded to earlier. And that's something I picked up at Napa, not a sponsor, called aluminum brightener. Now this stuff, you spray it on and you let it work for about 20 or 30 seconds and then you just wash it off. So let's try that. Wow, you can see it starting to foam up over here. Well, I think it helped a little bit, but it looks like some of the areas might need a second treatment. For example, this area right here, and basically this whole area here. I think I'll hit it one more time and see what happens. Okay, so this area still doesn't look all that great. I think I'm gonna try one more time, and this time I'm gonna hit it with a scrubber pad and see if that helps. Well, unfortunately, the aluminum brightener didn't work quite as well as I had hoped. However, now our valve cover is nice and clean, and actually, I'm really digging that wet look. So I think after this dries off, I'm gonna clear coat it. Oh hey, I almost forgot to reinstall those plates for the CCV system. Off camera, I cleaned all the mounting screws with brake cleaner. I'm going to install them with thread locker, and I'm also going to use a screwdriver to help prevent over tightening. By the way, I couldn't find a torque spec for these little bolts, but if you look closely, they're shoulder bolts. So they're only going to go so far and they're going to physically stop. So what I did is I just tightened them until they bottomed out, and I'm going to let the thread locker do the rest. And yeah, that's the ice cream truck in the background. Okay folks, we're ready to paint it. You can see I marked off a couple spots that I don't want to paint, and off camera I wiped down the whole thing with a clean microfiber towel. And last but not least, here's the paint we're going to use. Let's do this. Okay guys, we skipped ahead a little bit. Actually, I got impatient with the video making process because when you're filming while you work, it makes everything take twice as long. Anyway, the old valve cover is ready to come out. You can see I've removed the cabin filter housing, I've already removed the ignition coils, and I've disconnected the catch can. Also, I've already removed all the mounting bolts. So it is literally about to come out. And here we have the M56 valve cover ready to go in. Okay, off camera, I cleaned off the mating surface on the cylinder head. I used a rag and some brake cleaner. I also used a putty knife to remove the old RTV sealant. Speaking of which, there's a couple spots on the cylinder head where you want to put a dab of RTV sealant when you install the valve cover. This seam where the Vanos unit meets the cylinder head, you want to put a little dab right here, and also a little dab right here. Now, installing the M56 valve cover gasket is not the same as installing the M54. For example, on the plastic valve cover, you load the gasket into the valve cover, then you put the valve cover onto the engine. But with the M56, you put the gasket, or at least the big gasket, onto the engine first. Then you put the valve cover on top. That said, I think the spark plug gasket still goes on the valve cover first. Oh, and also, you see these half moon shapes on the gasket? On each corner on these half moon shapes, you want to put a little dab of RTV sealant. Okay, so I was wrong about this gasket. It doesn't fit tightly enough on the valve cover to stay in place. If I try to put it on the valve cover first, it just falls off. So I'm going to put this on the engine, just like this gasket, and we'll set the valve cover on top of it. Okay, another problem. The valve cover hits the strut tower brace. So I'm going to loosen it up and move it up out of the way. By the way, if you're wondering how I cleaned the mounting hardware, I put it in a jar with some gasoline and just gave it a few shakes. Okay, the valve cover is bolted in, and I must say it looks pretty good. Okay, the next step is something that may surprise some of you guys, and that is I'm going to remove the catch can. Yep, it's going bye-bye, at least for now. And the reason for that is pretty simple. The catch can is vented to atmosphere, and to put it bluntly, I'm getting tired of breathing those fumes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the M56 valve cover to the intake manifold similar to the stock M56 setup. Okay, next we're going to tackle the wiring for the ignition coils. Now, my car is an earlier model which has the bolt-in coils. The M56 is a later model with the push-in coils. So as you can see, the electrical connectors are different. This is my original one, this is the M56. So, this needs to go bye-bye. Okay, the ignition coil wiring harness goes alongside the engine, comes across here, goes through this grommet and into the ECU box. This is actually the ignition harness right here. It's got two connectors, one right here on the ECU, and then it has this other 2-pin connector here. This one is super easy to remove. You just squeeze the two tabs and it pulls out. Of course, now that I'm on camera, it won't do that. Yeah, and it pulls right out. Okay, the ECU connector has a tab right inside here. You just squeeze that tab and pull this connector out. Like that. I swear this was a lot easier when I wasn't holding the camera. Really? Hey, that was super easy. Okay, let's get this guy out of here. Okay, now comes the fun part. We get to modify these wiring harnesses to make them work in my car. Let's start with the 2-pin connector. As you can see, they are completely different. This is the one from my car, this is the M56 one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snip this connector off and splice it onto this wiring harness. Also, we need to modify the main connector, which is this one. Now, as you can see, the connectors are actually the same. However, if you look closely, the wires are arranged differently. Now, the wires are all the same. They're the same color, there's the same ones, but they're just arranged in a different order. So, we need to take the wires on the M56 harness, which is this one. We need to depin them, and then we need to reinstall them in the same order as this one. Now, in order to do that, we first need to remove this black housing off the connector. It has 2 little tabs on it. There's one right here, and there's one over here. When you release those tabs, the black housing slides off like that. Then you use a depinning tool to insert into the end like so, and if you're lucky, the wire will come out. Now, off camera, I tried depinning a couple of these and it was a huge hassle. So yeah, I think I'm gonna do that off camera. Okay, so finally I got this thing depinned. Man, that was a hassle. By the way, these cheap Amazon depinning tools are absolute trash. Do not buy them. Okay, anyway, now all we need to do is reinsert those wires in the same order as the ones in the stock wiring harness. Once again, they're all the same color, so you just match color for color, spot for spot. So for example, this wire that's black with a purple stripe, you see it goes up in that top corner. Also make sure the connectors are oriented the same. And you simply insert it until it clicks. Just like that. And then we'll do the same for the rest of these wires. Hey guys, off camera I decided to reinstall the stock intake manifold. I did that so I could use some of the CCV components along with the M56 valve cover. You see, I was using this other manifold which completely deletes the CCV system. I even plugged in the holes where the distribution thingy used to go. Now, this is reversible. I could have converted it back, but I just decided to reinstall the stock intake. Okay, speaking of the CCV system, here's what we're going to do. I have some of the M54 CCV pipes here, and I also have an M56 CCV pipe. This part connects to the valve cover, and of course this connects to the intake manifold. So I'm going to remove this part. Actually, that's broken, but you get the point. And I'm also going to remove that part of that pipe. This will connect to the valve cover, this will go to the intake, and then I will use a short piece of hose to connect them. And here it is installed. You see here we have our M54 CCV hose, we have our M56 fitting, and in between them we have a short piece of hose that wraps down underneath that intake runner. Kind of hard to see once it's installed, but okay, so I reinstalled the stock injector cover just to see what it looks like, because it covers up all the CCV stuff. And, I don't know. Let me know what you think. Should I keep it or remove it? Okay, so our M56 ignition coil harness is ready to go. I've got the 2-pin connector spliced on, and I've got the main connector repinned, so it should be ready to install. Oh, just as a side note, my original harness has a feedback circuit with a resistor in it. The ECU uses that circuit basically as a diagnostic feature, just to see if the ignition coils are working. This harness does not have that circuit, and it does not have that resistor. But I'm going to go ahead and install this harness, and actually I think I will show you those trouble codes. By the way, those misfire codes won't trigger a check engine light, or at least they shouldn't, and they won't affect how the engine runs. It's basically just a self-diagnostic thing the ECU does. Anyway, let's install this. Okay guys, we got everything installed. She should be ready to start. Oh, by the way, I also added some ground straps. One here and one over there. From the valve cover to the mounting bolt. Probably not necessary, but I like to be well grounded. Okay folks, let's start her up, see what happens. Cross your fingers. Well, it started right up, that's good. But it sounds like it's missing a cylinder. Let me go check that out. Okay, so cylinder number 2 is MIA. I think the coil might be bad, so I'll have to replace it. Unfortunately, it's too late to do that today, so we'll have to resume this tomorrow. Okay, so I just swapped ignition coils between cylinder 2 and cylinder 1. Now cylinder 1 is MIA, so it's definitely the coil. Okay guys, I got a couple coils from the salvage yard. Let's install one of these guys and see if it helps. Okay, cross your fingers. Hey, it's running on all cylinders. And it settled down into a nice stable idle. All right, I'm happy with that. Okay, so here we have an E46 BMW with the M56 valve cover And it's running on E85. By the way, that ticking noise you hear in the video is the fuel injectors. They're kind of loud. Okay, so at this point we're basically done. We've got the valve cover installed, we've got our ignition system installed, the car runs and drives, it doesn't leak any fluids, everything is good. Well, almost everything. You see, if you have an MS43 ECU like I do, it's going to trigger misfire codes. Now, this is not going to affect how the engine runs, it's not even going to turn on the check engine light. So if you wanted to, you could just ignore it. But we're not going to do that, because I want to show you some stuff in the video. So let's do that. Plot twist! I was going to show you how there were the misfire codes while the engine is running, but as you can see, by the way, this is a PASoft BMW scanner, and there are no misfire codes, which is interesting. I'm not sure why it's doing that, or I guess why it's not doing it. So yeah, my original plan was to show you the misfire codes that you get when installing the pencil coils on an MS43, and then I was going to show you how to modify the wiring harness to make those codes go away. And then I was going to show you in PASoft BMW scanner that the codes are actually gone. And there's no codes. So I mean, if there's no codes for me to get rid of, then why should I modify the wiring harness anymore? Right? So we're just going to leave it at this. See how it goes. Oh, and I almost forgot. We got to do a giveaway. Okay, before we end the video, I want to do one more thing. Recently, the channel has reached 3,000 subscribers, which is awesome. Thank you. To celebrate, we're going to give away some free swag from Super Clean. Now, if you want to be entered in the contest, you need to follow 3 simple rules. Rule number 1. Leave a comment to this video and put Super Clean in the comment. Rule number 2, make sure your YouTube profile has an email where I can contact you. You'll be surprised how many people forget this. Rule number 3, you need to have a mailing address in the continental US. So that's it. Leave a comment with Super Clean in it, make sure you have an email where I can contact you, and make sure to have a continental US address. Thanks again, and good luck.